To some, he was just that crazy guy from TV, the loud Australian in khaki shorts who jumped on crocodiles for entertainment. You might remember the catchphrases, the frantic hand gestures, and the adrenaline that seemed to pour through the screen. But if that's all you saw, you missed the most important part of the story. Steve Irwin wasn't a showman who used animals to get famous. He was a man who used fame to save animals. He possessed a rare, almost supernatural ability to communicate with creatures that the rest of the world feared. Where we saw a monster, he saw a beauty. Where we saw a threat, he saw a masterpiece of evolution. Whether you grew up watching him every weekend or you're only now discovering the legend of the crocodile hunter, you need to understand one thing. Steve didn't just study nature, he felt it in his veins. This is the story of a man who lived with more passion in one day than most do in a lifetime, and whose shocking death at the peak of his mission left a hole in the heart of the planet that has never been filled. Steve didn't learn about nature from textbooks. He learned it from the dirt under his fingernails. His playground wasn't a backyard. It was the Batt Reptile Park founded by his parents, Bob and Lynn. Bob Irwin was a pioneer, a man who could track a lizard across bare rock. Lynn was a wildlife nurse, a woman who turned their home into a hospital for injured joeys and birds. In this house, family dinner often included a rehabilitating kangaroo or a python in a box by the heater. Steve didn't just observe his parents. He worshipped their connection to the earth. By the age of 6, while other kids were getting bicycles, Steve was given a 12-foot scrub python. It wasn't a pet, it was a teacher. His father taught him the most important lesson: don't fear them, respect them, understand why they do what they do. By 9, Steve was already in the water. He wasn't just watching his father catch roe crocodiles, he was the one jumping onto their backs. This wasn't bravado, it was a rite of passage. Bob taught Steve how to feel the vibrations in the water, how to anticipate a strike before it happened, and how to handle a prehistoric predator with the tenderness of a father. This wasn't just a hobby, it was a calling. When Steve eventually took over the park, he didn't see a business. He saw a sanctuary. And when he met a young American tourist named Terry Raines in 1991, it was a collision of two identical souls. Instead of a honeymoon, they went to North Queensland to rescue crocodiles. That footage? That became the very first episode of The Crocodile Hunter. The world thought they were watching a TV show. In reality, they were watching a man's lifelong love letter to the wild. By the mid-90s, the man in khaki was everywhere. The Crocodile Hunter premiered in 1996 and quickly became a global juggernaut, eventually reaching 500 million viewers in 130 countries. But why did the world fall in love with him? It wasn't just the danger, it was the authenticity. In an era of polished TV presenters, Steve was a lightning bolt of raw emotion. When he screamed, "Oh, Crikey!" it wasn't a catchphrase written by a scriptwriter. It was the sound of a man who genuinely couldn't believe how beautiful a venomous snake was. He saw things we didn't. Steve didn't just handle animals. He spoke a language of touch and movement. He knew exactly when a crocodile was about to lung by the tension in its neck muscles. He knew a snake's strike range down to the millimeter. In 1992, Steve and Terry transformed the small family park into the Australia Zoo. This became his headquarters, his fortress. But as his fame grew, so did the criticism. People called him a circus act or a nuisance. They didn't understand that every time he interfered with an animal on camera, it was to relocate it from a residential area where it would have been killed or to gather data that would save its entire species. Between 1998 and 2005, Steve's mission became personal. With the birth of his daughter Bindi and son Robert, he wasn't just fighting for nature, he was fighting for their inheritance. He founded Wildlife Warriors in 2002, a global force to protect habitat. He spent millions buying up land in Australia, often outbidding developers who wanted to destroy the bush. He famously said, "I consider myself a wildlife warrior." My mission is to save the world's endangered species. He used the media as a shield, believing that if he could make a child in a city thousands of miles away love a lizard, that lizard species might survive another century. He was at the peak of his powers. He felt invincible because he lived in such total harmony with the creatures he loved. But the wild, as Steve always taught us, doesn't follow a script. September 2006. Steve was at the height of his career, filming a new series titled Ocean's Deadliest. Ironically, the weather was too rough to film the target species, sharks. On September 4th, the crew anchored near Batt Reef, off the coast of Port Douglas. Steve, never one to waste time, decided to go for a shallow dive. He wanted to capture some filler footage for his daughter Bindy's upcoming show. He wasn't looking for a fight. He was looking for beauty. He spotted a massive short-tailed stingray, nearly 8 feet wide. These animals are known as the ghosts of the reef. They're shy, docile, and almost never attack unless they feel completely trapped. Steve swam above it, and his longtime cameraman, Justin Lyons, began to film. It was supposed to be a standard shot, the ray swimming away into the blue. But for a reason only the ocean knows, the ray felt cornered. In a lightning-fast blur, the animal propped itself up on its front and struck upward with its jagged, venomous barb. It wasn't a bite or a nip. It was a flurry of hundreds of strikes in mere seconds. One of those strikes, a 1 in a million freak occurrence, pierced Steve's chest and went directly into his heart. The crew pulled him onto the boat, Croc 1. They fought for him. They performed CPR for over an hour. But Steve knew. He had spent his whole life reading the signs of the wild, and he could read his own. He looked up at Justin and whispered his final words, "I'm dying." At 44 years old, the man who had survived countless bites from crocodiles and the world's deadliest snakes was taken by a creature that rarely ever harms a human. The world stopped. In Australia, people pulled their cars to the side of the road and wept. It was a shocking, brutal end to a life that was lived at full throttle. But as the news spread, it became clear, while the man was gone, the wildlife warrior was immortal. Steve's death didn't spark a war against stingrays. Instead, it sparked a global movement. His family didn't retreat in grief. They stepped into the light. Today, the Australia Zoo is larger than ever. Wildlife Warriors continues to fund projects from Sumatra to Africa. And every time Irwin handles a crocodile with that same familiar fire in his eyes, or Bindy speaks with a voiceless, Steve is there. He didn't just leave a zoo or a TV show. He left a blueprint for how to love a planet that is slowly breaking. He taught us that Crikey isn't just a word, it's a way of life. It's the choice to see the wonder in the wild, even when it's dangerous. Steve Irwin, the man who wasn't afraid of the dark because he knew how much beauty was hidden within it.